about the same stuff. You really think you're different, man? You must be kidding. Think you're gonna hit it, but you just don't get it. It's impossible.
Hey, and welcome back. You might recall in my first episode how I discussed the story of discrimination and how it was used in the X-Men storyline. Well, last week I rewatched the original movies to celebrate X-Men Day and to be filled with nostalgia. My boyfriend had never seen any of the X-Men films, which to me is a form of blasphemy, so we binged all three in the same day. It's surreal how much of that movie I can actually quote. My friend Holly and I used to be able to quote pretty much the entire introduction of the movie back and forth. Personally, my favorite was X2, X-Men United, and my boyfriend, on the other hand, well, his favorite was Last Stand, which, yeah, it just feels so wrong. It's up there with, like, the live-action Avatar: The Last Airbender or the movie adaptation of Aragon. Though, nobody can ever play Xavier and Magneto as well as Patrick Stewart and Sir Ian McKellen, much like how Hugh Jackman has pretty much become iconic Wolverine, and nobody could play that role as well as him. The original films also have some other amazing actors that tend to go unnoticed. Halle Berry plays Storm, Famke Johnson plays Jean Grey, James Marsden plays the perfect Cyclops. Like, straight up, my husband right there. Ellen Page is everything you could want and more in a gay Kitty Pryde. I mean, her last name is Pride, for Christ's sakes. And Shawn Ashmore plays a pretty good pre-gay Bobby. And you have Anna Paquin as Rogue. Of course, with the new X-Men movies, we have seen some new actors playing these roles, some amazing, like Sophie Turner as Jean Grey, and others less so. Looking at you, Jennifer Lawrence. But regardless, still a wonderful series, and it's filled with some excellent content discussing mutant rights. There are a few prominent moments in the movie that touch on the discrimination. These moments are extremely relevant to the struggles of minorities, as I've covered pretty much in every episode. Despite it being filmed in the 2000 to 2006 range, these moments can still be applied to our 2019 issues on immigration and coming out as gay, religious persecution, and being a person of color. The first crucial moment is when Mystique is on the plane with Senator Kelly and is listening to him discuss his stance on mutants, which is, to no surprise, super negative. She reveals herself to be a mutant, kicks him in the face with her feet because that's how Mystique does it, and says, "You know, people like you are the reason I was afraid to go to school as a child. When you're different, children tend to make fun of you. That's always been kind of an issue." And they also tend to pick up on their parents' bigotry, and the cycle continues. Mystique is able to blend in with others due to her mutation, but chooses not to unless required because she has learned to be proud and unashamed of who she is, which falls into the issue of why I don't always like Jennifer Lawrence as Mystique, because of the fact that she refuses to wear some of the makeup, which makes her character iconic. It also is during the first movie that Wolverine gets called a freak at a bar, and the bartender pulls out a rifle on him despite him doing pretty much nothing but minding his business and defending himself against a drunken man who was harassing him for winning a bar fight. That was a legal bar fight, not like, just two guys going at it in a bar. You also see the protest take place in that movie where it's very anti-mutant, some saying, with posters saying, "Send mutants to the moon forever," which is just a really weird sign to be holding up in the first place, but bigotry nonetheless. Others saying freaks of natures, and if you've ever read the comics or watched the TV show, you'll know that there was actually a neo-Nazi group that was known as the Friends of Humanity, which had like very neo-Nazi and nationalist themes going on, and it reminded me a lot of the protests that they had. In the second movie, you see William Stryker, who is a leader for Weapon X, and he's the one responsible for Wolverine's skeleton and also Lady Deathstrike. In the second movie, he uses chemicals to subdue and control mutants as slaves, including Lady Deathstrike, who is an Asian, which often becomes an issue in TVs because so often we see Asian women as being used as subservient. So for another very prominent and very powerful female Asian character to be subdued using chemicals and mind control just brings it all back in loop. When the X-Men discuss this, Xavier comments that it's not uncommon to experiment on mutants in this time, which has happened frequently with Weapon X as they dehumanize mutants and use them for weapons or personal gain. The other instance also occurs in the second movie when Bobby Drake returns to his family home. He informs the rest of the X-Men that his family believes he's going to a private school, and they don't know that he's a mutant. He comes out to his parents and are met with the same response that many LGBT children face. His mother talks about the quote-unquote mutant problem and asks him if he has ever tried not being a mutant. His brother even calls the police on him. And this is one of the most common responses to people who are coming out as gay. Those who don't approve almost always ask, have you tried not being gay? Because many believe that being gay is a choice. It is no secret that the entire scene was wrote with the parallels of what it was like to come out to family as LGBT. Bryan Singer even made comments of that in interviews. From the weaponizing of the cure to the Mutant Registration Act, we see a lot of similar things going on in the day-to-day news, and it's easy to see the side-by-side comparisons, but it still often goes unnoticed, which is why I find it so important to talk about it, because minorities know right off the back the parallels to their own life. But for those who are not going through it, those who have, a position of privilege, they don't always notice it, and it doesn't come as straightforward, but the conversation is just as important. And by showing them these issues in fiction, perhaps it can open their eyes to the day-to-day discrimination we see all over the world based on skin color, religion, sexuality, disability, etc. After all, that's what X-Men has always been about. I hope you've been enjoying the podcast, and stay tuned for next week's episode. It's always a great pleasure, and I'm really grateful to everyone who takes the time to listen. Happy Pride Month, everybody. Woo! Kitty Pryde is gay, and nobody can convince me otherwise. See you next week. Bye.